One day, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell on me. She said that my husband was having an affair and that she was supporting him in this. On top of that, they planned to live together at the mistress's house. At my in-laws' home, my father-in-law was in a wheelchair and needed constant care. Despite this, my husband and his mother both left to live with the mistress. What they did was clearly unforgivable. Still, I couldn't just abandon my father-in-law, so I stayed to take care of him. As I struggled with what to do, my father-in-law suddenly stood up. My name is Linda, and I'm 30 years old. I've been married to my husband, Bob, for almost 3 years. In the beginning, our relationship was great, but now we don't talk as much. Is this what people mean by getting used to each other? The more we knew about each other, the more our love settled down, and we started living a more stable life. There was nothing wrong with our marriage, but it had become a bit boring. About a year ago, Bob's job got busier. He started working overtime and going on business trips, which used to be rare. He still took care of all the bills, and I had my own job too, so I couldn't always be worried about him. Sometimes, when he came home early, we'd have dinner together and catch up. It might seem from the outside like our marriage was cooling off, but that wasn't true. This was just how our life was. Then one day, I came home from work and found Bob there already. Normally, he wouldn't be home until after 10 p.m., but it was only 7 p.m. "Welcome back," I said. "You're home early, didn't you have to work overtime?" He responded, "That's not the point. My father had an accident and is in the hospital." According to my husband, his father had an accident while heading to work at his own company. A car ran a red light and crashed into him. Luckily, his injuries weren't fatal, but he ended up paralyzed in both legs and one arm, leaving him in a wheelchair. I couldn't believe it. My father-in-law, who loved hiking and fishing, was now stuck in a wheelchair. It was heartbreaking. He was always an outdoor person and would take my husband and me on trips to various places. He treated me like his own daughter and often said, "If you ever have any problems, don't hesitate to ask me for help." Now, hearing that he had an accident was hard to accept. My father-in-law owned his own company, but since my husband worked elsewhere, we weren't told right away about the accident. We only found out when my mother-in-law called us. In these times, it was difficult to visit him as often as we wanted, and it was frustrating. One day, my husband, Bob, spoke to me with a serious look on his face. "Linda, Mom asked me for help with Dad." "What does she need?" I asked. "She's finding it hard to take care of him by herself, so she's wondering if we could help." "You mean take care of your father?" I asked. "Yeah," Bob said. "Mom's getting older, and she can't manage everything alone anymore." "So we'd have to move to your parents' house?" "Yes, there's plenty of space there, and we could all live comfortably. What do you think?" I fell silent. I cared deeply for my father-in-law, but I couldn't just agree to something I'd never done before without thinking it through. "It's not that I don't care about your father," I said, "but I also have my job." Suddenly being asked to provide care, I'm not sure what to do. I tried to think of the best solution, but nothing came to mind. Sensing my hesitation, Bob took my hand and looked at me directly. "I need you," Bob said. "I know it's going to be tough since it's your first time, but I'm worried that if we leave everything to Mom, she'll break down too." "I think it will be hard," I said, "but I have my job." "You can quit your job, Linda. I'll cover all the expenses. Can you focus on taking care of Mom and Dad?" "Quit my job?" "Yes," Bob said. "I'll support us financially. That's why I need you. Our family needs you." He was practically begging me on his knees. Eventually, I decided to quit my job and take care of my father-in-law, just as Bob had asked. A few days after we moved in with Bob's parents, he suddenly announced, "I'm going to take over my father's company and become the president." Even my father-in-law was surprised, but he seemed happy that his son was willing to take over the business. With tears in his eyes, my father-in-law said, "Bob, I can't believe you're saying this after all the times you said you didn't want to work for the company." "Well, with you in this condition, Dad, I can't just let the company go. I need to step up." "Thank you," his father said. "I was worried about what would happen to the company. I thought I'd have to leave it to someone I trusted, but if you're willing to take it over, I'd like to pass it on to you." "I'll do my best, Dad. I'm counting on you. Please make sure the employees have a good working environment." "Of course," Bob said. Bob officially took over the company, and my father-in-law stepped down from president to chairman. Although the chairman usually has responsibilities, my father-in-law decided to let Bob run the company completely, keeping only the title. 2 months passed since Bob became president. Every day, He would come home late, usually past midnight. At first, I thought he was just busy with his new role and was working overtime, but working late every single night seemed strange. What really made me suspicious was the odd smell coming from him. One night, I couldn't sleep, so I got up to get a glass of water from the kitchen. I heard the front door open, and when I greeted Bob with, "Welcome home," I noticed a strong smell of soap coming from him. Bob looked surprised to see me awake. "What? Why are you up at this hour?" "I couldn't sleep. You've been coming home late a lot," I said. "Well, I can't help it. I've taken over Dad's company, and there's a lot I don't know." "I see, you must be exhausted," I replied. "I'm tired, I'm going to bed," he said, trying to leave, but again, I caught that strong soap scent. On impulse, I grabbed his arm and asked firmly, "Bob, who do you usually work overtime with?" "What? Why are you asking me that?" he responded defensively. "I just noticed a nice scent on you." "How should I know? I'm working hard, so stop asking me petty questions." His irritated expression only made my suspicions grow. As I wondered how to confront him, Bob let out a frustrated sigh. "Can you stop with that already?" Bob snapped. "I come home tired, and you start questioning me right away. That's not a nice welcome." "I didn't mean to, I was just curious," I explained. "So you're doubting me? We're living comfortably because I work like this every day. Do you understand that?" "I do, and I appreciate it." "Then cut it out. If you have time to talk about this, why don't you do some cleaning instead?" "I don't have time for this." With that, he stormed upstairs, leaving me alone. Later, when I peeked into the bedroom, he was ignoring me, playing on his phone. I tried to apologize, but he completely ignored me. The next day, my mother-in-law confronted me with an angry expression. "Linda, I heard you suspected Bob of cheating yesterday." "I didn't suspect him," I said. "I just asked who he was working overtime with." "That's suspicious enough," she shouted. "You're only able to live because Bob works hard. Do you realize that?" "I do, and I'm grateful. I was just voicing a concern I had." "Well, it was rude. What are you trying to do, make Bob uncomfortable? You're the worst wife ever." After yelling at me, she dumped all the housework on me and stormed off. My mother-in-law has never really liked me. In front of my husband and father-in-law, she pretends to help with housework, but I'm the one who does all the chores. I also take care of my father-in-law. My mother-in-law often finds excuses to go out and only comes home in the evening. My father-in-law, who mostly stays in his room, doesn't know how often she leaves during the day. Occasionally, people from the company visit him, but other than that, he rarely leaves his room. On top of that, my mother-in-law warned me not to tell my father-in-law or Bob about anything unnecessary. So, I had no choice but to quietly do all the housework and caregiving. What made it bearable was my father-in-law's kindness. Every time I helped him, he would thank me with a sorry expression. "Linda, I'm so sorry. You must hate taking care of an old man like me, right?" "That's not true at all," I reassured him. "I think of you as my own father," I told my father-in-law. "It's an honor to help you." "Having you say that makes me feel lucky," he replied. "I'm really glad someone like you married Bob." "Likewise," I said. "I'm glad to have a kind person like you as my father-in-law." In the midst of the hurtful words and actions from my husband and mother-in-law, my father-in-law, who needed me, was the one keeping me going. Every night, I would help him get ready for bed, wipe him down, and turn off the lights. But today, as I returned to the living room, I was surprised to see Bob and my mother-in-law there. My husband had a strange grin on his face, and I had a bad feeling about it. Then, my mother-in-law said, "Good timing, I have something to tell you. I'll get straight to the point. You should take care of your father here for the rest of your life." "Wait, what?" I asked, shocked. "I've decided to live with a new daughter-in-law," she continued. "Bob will be with me too." "A new daughter-in-law?" I was speechless. As if to mock me, my husband threw divorce papers in front of me. "I have a girlfriend," he said. "My mom and I are moving in with her. Whether you submit the divorce papers is up to you, but you'll still be responsible for taking care of Dad." I felt like the world was crumbling around me and collapsed to my knees. Bob and my mother-in-law started packing their things, leaving me alone in the silent living room. Tears started falling when, suddenly, my father-in-law appeared in his wheelchair. "Linda, what's all this noise? Where's Bob and his mother?" he asked. "And why are you crying?" I explained everything that had happened, and his expression grew serious. By the time I finished, his eyes had a determined look. He stood up quickly, shocking me. Linda, it's time for a counterattack, he said. Huh? Your legs, I stammered. Sorry for keeping it a secret, but I've been able to walk for a while now. Leave everything to me. The preparations are already in place. My father-in-law pulled a large brown envelope from a drawer and showed me its contents. Inside were documents proving my husband's affair and, to my surprise, evidence of my mother-in-law's affair as well. He explained that after Bob became president, he had trusted employees keep an eye on him. They discovered that Bob left work on time every day, even though he always came home after midnight. My father-in-law hired a private detective to investigate further. He also suspected his wife, who frequently went out during the day, and had her investigated too. Both of their affairs came to light, and he had just recently gathered the evidence. He had been waiting for the right moment to tell me the truth. I'm glad we could talk, Linda, my father-in-law said. What do you want to do? I want to get back at them, I replied. Leave the rest to me, he said, and made a call to someone from his company. Soon after, my husband was demoted from his CEO position. I filed for divorce, as my father-in-law had suggested, using the evidence of the affair, through a lawyer. I also asked for compensation from Bob and his lover. A week later, Bob came to the house, likely because he had received a legal notice. In front of me and my father-in-law, he shouted angrily, "Dad, what's going on? Just because I cheated, you're firing me as CEO?" "Shut up," my father-in-law responded. "You didn't help with my care, and you hurt Linda. You're not fit to lead the company." But, Bob fell to his knees in tears, clinging to me. "Linda, please, I don't mind if you retract the divorce. Convince Dad to let me stay. I'll break up with my lover. Please drop the compensation claim." Even then, Bob was only thinking about himself. I was completely done with him. I let out all my frustration. "What are you talking about? Retract the divorce? No way. I'm thrilled to be free of a scumbag like you. The divorce is final, and everything that's happened is your fault." "But I thought you were only using the divorce as a threat," Bob pleaded. "I wasn't. I hope you, your mom, and your lover all go to hell. You need to stop expecting help from anyone." I threw him out the front door. From outside, I could hear him pleading, "Help me, I was wrong. I won't cheat again. Please forgive me. Linda, Dad, please don't abandon me." Neither my father-in-law nor I responded to his cries. Later, Bob and my mother-in-law were sued for alimony. They broke up with the mistress and were kicked out of her home. Becoming homeless, they ended up living in a comic book cafe and working low-paying jobs. Their savings were drained, and they accumulated debt, leaving them in poverty. On the other hand, I continued to take care of my father-in-law. Despite the divorce, he kindly said, "You're welcome to stay as long as you'd like." Grateful for his kindness, I decided to continue living with him. Recently, my father-in-law has started going to a daycare service during the day, which allowed me to start working again during those hours. There will be challenges ahead, but I'm determined to do my best and continue caring for my father-in-law.